All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to get started here in just a second. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Sunday. I have a few topics that I'll be talking about today. I'll let a few people get in here. I see a few people rolling in. Happy New Year to everyone. Hopefully 2025 will be the year that all your dreams come true. So to get started here, I'm just sitting at my shop. We are one of the largest, if not the largest, Porsche 944 repair shops anywhere. For those that don't know, I am Brent, and I own the shop here in Charlotte. And a few weeks back, we did a couple of no-start condition live streams, and I went over pretty much everything. One of the things that I excluded was the alarm systems, and that's because it can be kind of convoluted, and not many cars have them. Quite a bit do, but not every car has them. So when I was going over to schematics, I sort of left that out, but a lot of your no start conditions are going to be because of the alarm system. So today I'm going to try and go through, and I'm going to try my best to untangle the alarm system for you guys and make it a little bit easier to understand. So one of the things that I have to say is there are no schematics that I can find anywhere, not even in the factory workshop manual, which I have here, that go over the early alarm. So we had a car here. It's an 84, and the car would just cut out sometimes with no rhyme or reason, and the tach didn't work, which I thought was pretty interesting. The owner said that it was working before he took it to the last mechanic, and I found that the wire that goes to the tachometer was cut, and that allowed the car to run, but that didn't explain why the car would just cut off sometimes. So I did find that the reference sensors had tried to be fixed in the past and had a whole new wiring harness, but it had been botched several times since then. So we put in a whole new wiring harness for it, and a whole new reference sensor wiring to eliminate that. But when I attached the cut wire to the coil, now the car didn't start. So I traced that wire back, and now you can find the wires that go to the alarm in the workshop manual, but you will not find the actual plug or any information on the system whatsoever. If it's there, I've missed it, or my pages are missing. I don't think they are. So they may not exist, but I do know that I have searched high and low online. I can't find anything either. So I had to go in and pin out every single wire on the plug to try and get an idea of what's going on with it. And of course, the computer itself, or the little alarm module, whatever, it's just relay, is missing in that car. So I think I got another car over at the other shop that has the wire, actually has the control unit, and I can get more information on it if I can get my hands on it. But without it, I'm kind of still guessing some stuff. So I'm going to try and stay away from the guessing here. We're going to take what we know and we're going to apply it. So yeah, so if you've had some issues with your alarm in the past, I'm going to try and break it down and explain it. The later alarms, everything's there. You can find all the information you want on it. I went over to Clark's Garage, and if you look at the diagram that they have laid out, it's as if you're looking at the back of the control module, and that can kind of give you a headache if you don't know what you're looking at, because I was trying to find the schematics for the early one, and I kept looking at that, and I'm going, is this the mirrored version for the plug, or is this the mirrored version for or am I looking at the back of the control module? So it took a little while to figure out, because on the early pinouts, they have the numbers of the wires wrong. So that gave me a huge headache to try and untangle that. So what I could find in the manual, going back with the wires, showed me that the stuff on Clark's Garage, try and reference different places to try and get some idea what's going on with this thing, because no idea. So like I said, that was the only thing online that I could find that referenced the early control module, and the pins were backwards. So the green wire is listed as number 1, but it's actually number 4, and it goes into K1, and I think there it's listed as 15, which is kind of accurate, because you get power with the switch on. So I could see where the confusion comes from, but it's actually the green wire cool signal, which is for K1. Confuses me. And even worse is that the black wire that's listed as number 4 on Clark's Garage goes to 86, which is what the green wire on the later cars go to. So you think that, hey, they're onto something, but this works completely different than the later alarm system. So on the later alarm system, you have 86 not getting power if the alarm switch is turned in the quarter panel. So in that case, when you go to start the car, that's disabled. You can't get power from 15 on the ignition switch, which also runs as the black wire to the coil. Now keep in mind, this is a later car. That then tells the relay that it can switch the computer, the DME itself, on, and then the DME can then send power to the fuel pump relay. So all of that's disabled if the switch in the key is in the quarter panel is turned for the alarm, and it also won't charge your battery. So that's what you're jumping on a later car. You're running the wires, the black wire on number 1 to the green wire on that, so that way it can turn the computer on, which is 86 on the DME relay, but it's listed on the actual control module as 87A, because that's 87A on that. So keep in mind, it goes back and forth. You'll have 87A on the control module, but it's actually going to 86 on the DME relay. Everything else is pretty much straightforward. 15 isn't actually coming from, kind of does come from 15 on the ignition switch, but in this it's tied into 15 for the black coil wire. So, okay, makes sense. It could also be 15 inside the control module. And then you have 31 here, which is the ground, which is also 31 in the fuse box. So hopefully this is making a little bit of sense. So when you turn the key, you're not going to be able to charge the battery, and it's not going to send power to the computer to even turn on the fuel pump relay or even allow the car to have spark. So if you're having a no start issue and your car has an alarm, you're not getting spark, you're not getting fuel, your DME itself's not even coming to life, then you may want to try and first you got to remove the control module, and then this is how the plug is going to look. and I've pinned out everything. So you can see that number 5 here is for the key, and that's for the key that's in the actual quarter panel. Going back, got 6s for the hood. So if the hood is popped while the alarm is armed, then you're gonna have them. I left out the 2-pin plug over here. That just goes to that additional horn. It's pretty straightforward when it's armed and it sets the relay off. You just have one wire running to the horn. The horn is then grounded at the chassis over there, and then there's a power that comes off. I think it's 30, or it's listed as 30, but I think it just comes straight from the battery. So that relay just clicks and it makes the horn beep like that. So kind of left that out. But the things you need to know here is that when it sees that the key, I'm looking at everything in a mirror here. So when this is armed, it disconnects the power coming from the ignition switch and the power going to 86 on the DME relay, even though it's 87 for the module itself. So when that happens, you're not going to have power to the computer, and therefore you won't have power to fuel pump, no spark, any of that stuff. And also, as default, I guess they figured if someone was crafty enough to overcome all that stuff, then it also disconnects the alternator, so it won't get a signal from the exciter wire. And so you have to jump that as well. So what you're looking to do is go jump 61 here on 7 and 8, and then you're going to jump 1 and 4 here. And this is for a late car. Now keep in mind it's a little bit different on the early cars. So hopefully that explains the late cars a little bit. And if you can see the top there, I have everything pretty much pinned out here. So 87A is what you're going to see on that, on the control module, but it actually runs to 86, which turns the power on for the computer. So that's how the late system works, which is pretty straightforward. All right, with that in mind, let's take a look at the early car. Okay, so again, we're going to be looking at the plug as if the computer is completely unplugged and you're looking at the plug itself. So these are going to be a little bit backwards. Like I said, Clark's Garage had black as the, I believe it was the K1, which it's actually green. And I know that for a fact because just looking at the way it plugs in, this is the way this goes. So yeah, you can see that you have a K1 here rather than a wire running to 86, but you still have that black wire running to 86 here, but it works a little bit different, and I'm not exactly sure how that works. And I'm going to try and get the control module later this week. So with the later car, I can explain that once it's armed, it doesn't send power to these two things, and it won't charge your battery. The same thing here for the most part, but instead of that green wire running to 86 and supplying power, 86 is here on 1, and it always has power. So the car can start and run if you unplug the computer. You just won't have the battery charged. Also, if you try and jump these on an early car, it's now, instead of going to the black wire on the coil feeding power to 86, like on the late car, you would have 86 when you tried to start the car, sending power, trying to send power to the green wire to tach, and that's going to disable the car. So it does kind of the opposite from what I can tell. So when I jumped these two, it disabled the car because now it can't get a clean signal from the DME. It just gets a 12-volt power source. So that's maybe how that works. you may have a better guess, and you might actually know. I have not gotten that far yet. I have done good to get this far, but I find on the early cars, you just disconnect the computer, disconnect the alarm module, and then you just jumper 7 and 8 over here. Right there. And then your battery will charge. So hopefully that takes a little bit of the enigma out. If you're out there and you're having a no start issue with a early car and you've jumped 1 and 4 and you still can't figure out why the car is running, it's because I believe the early control module actually disables the car by doing it a little bit differently. I like the way the later car does it better, but again, that's just my guess. I'm going to get my hands on a control module from an early car, but they are wired up completely different in that regard. Just the 1 and 4 pins, but everything else as far as your hood, the charge lights, and the door and the ground and all that stuff is essentially the same. But yeah, I think what the problem with that car was they had jumpered 1 and 4, car didn't start, and they found that by clipping the wire to the tack, which is where that comes from, the car ran. But now the tack didn't work because there was no need to jump those wires. So essentially they just disabled the jumper that they had just made to get the car to run. So there you go. And 86 on the later car, like I said, it gets power from 15, so it disables the computer and everything. But on 86 on the early car, you'll have power as soon as the car is running. Not sure why that is, because when you turn the ignition switch, you should get power from 15 that goes to 86 if you don't have an alarm at all. And on the later cars with the alarms, it just bridges that, and now it sends power to DME. But on the early cars, you'll have 12 volts once the car is running, and DME sending out signal. Well, no, I got a lot to learn. Maybe there's something just goofy with this car in particular, but I've seen this on 2 cars now, and the wiring is the same, and it does the same thing. But I've got to go get that alarm control module to see what's going on. So someone asked, is the 88 924S alarm wired as an early or late 944? If you have an 88 924S with alarm, you probably got the only one. I've seen a lot of 924S's, and the alarm was always optional, but I have not ever seen one on a 924S. But my guess is that with everything on the 924S, it's probably going to have the later alarm. The early alarm, I mean, I could be wrong because the wiring in the harness is different for the early and late cars. But I'd actually have to see one on a 924S. I have probably seen hundreds of 924S's, and I've never seen that. I own the only 924S that had the optional cruise control. I've never seen it on the 924S with cruise control, but it doesn't have the alarm. If you could send me some pictures to Andreas.info of your alarm, I could look at the wires and easily tell whether it's wired up for the late. You would think that it's going to have the late setup, but if not, here's everything again. This is the late alarm, and then there's the late pin out. So yeah, what's really confusing me is I get that K1 on the early alarm goes to the green tack signal, and that's perfectly fine. It's just done a little bit different. But 86 only gets power when the car is running. When that should get power anytime the key is on. Sure beats me. How is it getting power? Where is it getting power from? And why is it only when the car is actually running? Like, I could see that with the computer on, say that the alarm's out of the equation, and then the wire that starts the fuel pump relay is coming from the computer. And as long as the engine is running, because the DME sees the tach signal and everything, that's going to keep the fuel pump running. So it makes sense that 86 petit should be the same. But I pinned this out, and that's what I got. No power when you just switch the ignition on, but power whenever the car is running. And so going back to his question, here is the pinout for the early alarm. Like I said, it could be an anomaly with this car, but we can only go off what we know. And then this is the plug itself. So yeah, I'd be interested to see an alarm on a 924S. I'd never seen one, but I kind of figured one was out there. I think that everything on the 924S had to be everything had to be optioned on those cars. So Kevin asked, in this comparison, are we talking about the factory alarm option cars with extra keyhole in the driver's side quarter panel versus the later cars with the activation in the door key? So yes, let me clarify here. And I didn't. The later cars, the very, very later cars, like the S2 and the 968, have a different setup, and I just didn't have time to look at those and bring those into the conversation. So this is only referring to the cars, any of the cars that have the extra key in the quarter panel. So I hope that clarifies it. It is a little bit different on the S2s and those cars that have it built into the door lock. So I will look at that. Actually, I have a 968 here, and I wanted to look at that and add that to the mix, but I got so wrapped up just trying to figure out the early alarm layout that it really left no time for anything else. I mean, I'm still confused about some of this stuff, but got a pretty good handle on it. But I'm not going to know anything until I see another car and I get my hands on the control module. But from what I've seen, that any car such as the 911s that have that K1, you just have to jump 7 and 8 and the car run. Now, why that is, don't know. It seems like 86 works a little bit different in the early cars. Shouldn't. But yeah, even the 89. Yeah, I think by 89 they might have integrated all of them into that. But the good thing about having those later cars is I think that everything for them is available online, so you don't have to go down this rabbit hole. The only reason I ended up even looking at the later alarm was because I figured if I could pin that out, it'd give me a better idea of maybe what's going on with that car. It didn't, but I was like, well, I'm here. So, but I would absolutely love, you'd think that one of these pages would have something with the alarm on it. It has a few inserts and some wires that says to alarm system, but then it doesn't show anything for the alarm system. So it's an enigma at this point. I think that just with that information, we can get the early cars running and disable a faulty alarm control module. But beyond that, I'm not much help. And but I guess that's all that really matters, isn't it? As long as your car runs, we figured it out. But yeah, it's really odd that they didn't include that in here. Happy Fox says, always wanted to lively up and get a remote for my super early Ungo module. Cool. Yeah, I've got an Ungo box here. Haven't really messed with it any. It came out of a car that we replaced the dashboard on. Morning, Kenneth. Hoping you're having a great 2025 and a great Sunday. Yeah, there's nothing here. And if I go online, there's just that one part on Clark's garage, but the schematics backwards. So, I mean, it's not their fault because there's nothing on them to go by. So his guess was as good as anybody's. But as I'm pinning stuff out, and I did take the control module and plug it in, I'm like, K1 goes to the green. So this means that it could be one. And it could still be right, but it's labeled as 15 on Clark's garage still. And 15 is black when you plug it in. So my guess is that the whole thing is just off. Don't really know how it disables anything. It looks like if it's not just shorting those out to disable the car when activated, then looks like you can just unplug the control module and put the wires on there. And yeah, I've got one, and it was actually one of those Ungo boxes was hooked up in this car. I could have probably looked at it. I figured I could just find the manual online and check it out, but I just took it out. So maybe I should have looked to see how someone hooked that up. I just assumed there was a lot of information on them because I've seen them in a lot of cars. I am not really keen on adding anything to the car that is going to disable it. I don't think that there's anyone out there really wanting to steal my 40-year-old car at this point. It's possible. But if I had a alarm system in my car, I'd want it to work properly. I'd send the control unit off and have it fixed, and that way it would work. But a lot of them are missing keys. I don't know of one car. Maybe I've ever seen one car that still had the key. So I have several 944s, and I have never attempted to arm them. It's just bypassed at the moment. Not much for schematics and manuals around. Yeah. Need the tech manual to pair up new remotes now that they're gone. Yeah. Did they have remotes back then? I didn't even know it had a remote. I guess it makes sense. I've seen quite a few of those, and this one's in good condition. I just don't know a lot about the Ungos. From what I want to say is that it disabled the starter, which is well, that would make sense that it has no key and only remote since It's usually located in the glove box, and there's no way to get into it unless you unlock the door. And then by then, I'm sure the alarm's going off. So then you got to open the glove box and disable it. So it makes sense. Yeah, this one doesn't have the remote. So if it had a remote, I've got no idea how to get it to work again. But yeah, I thought it'd be cool to like have a little on-go box in the glove box, but I like period correct stuff if I'm gonna go for it, but it takes up a lot of room, not a lot of information on it. Don't want something to go bad and then I've disabled my car when I'm just trying to drive it, Especially don't want anything where I have to hack into any wires. So if I were to add a alarm to my car, I'd probably go with the factory alarm and just wire everything in, make it clean. But I have thought about it. Of course, you could just put a modern alarm in there and it'd probably be hidden and you'd never know it's there. Oh, okay. Maybe mine's older than yours. I don't think there's an antenna on mine. I didn't see an antenna on mine. So maybe mine is just really old and doesn't have anything. I'm not quite sure on how that works. And Kevin said, I have to check, but I gave my brother a very late production 88 924S, and I believe it has cruise control. I didn't realize. Yeah, it's a pretty uncommon option. I've only seen mine with it, so if it had it, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and I think it was an 88 mostly thing. So the one I have seen with cruise controls was an 88 924S. I've never seen an 87 with one. It's not to say there isn't, but I've never seen an 87 924S with a cruise control. Yeah, he says it's just a black wire for the antenna. Yeah, I don't think I have that. I'll look. I've got it over here. Hey, no problem, Alex. He said that no idea if the key works, but you piqued my interest. Appreciate this. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I don't see a lot of alarm issues. Many times when we get cars in here, the alarm's been jumped for a long time, and it's not supposed to be a long-term solution, but there's nothing wrong with it. If you look at the wiring diagram, all you're doing is when you turn the ignition key on the late car, you're essentially, if the alarm's disabled, then you're sending power to 86 to tell the computer to get power. Well, that gives the computer power to the DME relay, and then you can start your car. And if you just jump those wires, now you've just essentially made it the way it works if you didn't have an alarm at all. So there might be something I'm missing, but that's exactly the way it's wired up in the diagram. It's not supposed to be a long-term solution, but it's essentially the same thing as just not having an alarm if you do that. But with the early cars, I don't know what's going on with them. I can only tell you the way it's pinned out and what happens when this happens, but how that box works is a complete mystery for now. But it should at least get you started on it. And maybe some of you guys out there will sleuth around and you might have access to stuff that, on your own car that I don't have. So I have another 84. It's my mom's car. It has the alarm. It has the control module, but it's 50 miles away. So I looked at the wires, had her FaceTime me and send me the wires, and the wires were exactly the same. So I'm guessing it functions exactly the same, obviously. But need to get actual early control unit in my hand to see how it goes. Like, it shouldn't be that complicated. It should have just been in some schematics somewhere, but apparently they wanted to keep that secret. But once that happens, I'll let you guys know, because I'm really interested in it, and I will definitely go through the like later cars, like the 89s and up, that have the built-in stuff. I know that operates different. You don't want to jump the wires the same way either. I don't know if that's because they went back to the old way. I meant to look. I actually had the schematic in my hand, and I meant to look at it, but I got so swept up because every time I think I had something figured out, a whole new headache showed up, because I would go back to try and cross-reference something on Clark's garage, and then I'm like, well, that can't be it because this says this, and then I would just go out to the car and pin it out, and I'm like, yeah, well, okay, I'm just confusing myself. So yeah, disabling an alarm can, I suppose, be a long-term solution. If it was a problem, one of the first things I thought was that if you got in an accident, the DME relay severs the power once the engine stops running. The way that works is if the engine's running, you're in an accident, and the fuel supply is cut, and you got fuel going everywhere, the engine's going to stop because it's no longer getting fuel. And if that relay is kicked on, you have it jumped, then you're going to have fuel just spewing out, and you could be unconscious, or who knows what. It doesn't really matter, even in the few seconds. Seconds matter when you've got fuel going everywhere. So the computer knows that the DME sees that the engine stops running, so therefore it cuts power to the fuel pump, and now you've eliminated that. So I thought maybe the reason why people say not to do the that jumper permanently is because now you're sending power to the fuel pump anytime the ignition switch is on through jumping the relay. But I didn't find that to be true at all. It's just basically making it like the alarm was just never there, because when you disable the alarm, it's just taking the power that would be going from 15 at the ignition switch to 86 that doesn't supply power to the computer. Now, again, that doesn't explain the early cars. They use the same DME relay. They should have the same setup. But when this car is running, again, there could be something goofy with this car, but the wiring, I couldn't find anything. I looked under the dash to see if someone done something with it or something, but I couldn't find it. So again, this is just going to make the things all confusing. And eventually, when I figure it out, I'm going to be like, oh, I'm probably dummy for that. I should have known better. That stuff. But for now, when I start up this 84, so I pin the black wire to that, to the 86, and I'm like, okay, that should be 87A on the control module, but it's labeled as 15, but you're not getting power from 15 on the ignition switch. Can't explain that. But when the car is running, it's almost like the power from the computer that goes to the fuel pump is now going to 86, because now I have 12 volts when the car is running. So that shouldn't be that way. But I can't find anything that's spliced, and everything looks like peripherally the way it looks. It looks the way it should. So, but I have also seen other places that similar alarms, you can't jump the K1, and that it just doesn't work. I believe that that's what disables the car, and if you just remove the control module, then it just works normal. But still a little confused on how that works, but hopefully one day we'll know. But all you need to know now is that on an early car, just jump to 7 and 8 and you should be fine. And then I will get into the late ones later on. So there's a late one. Let's see. I don't know if it's in here. I believe this one ends at 87. Yeah, this one here stops at 87. But I did have those in my hand, but I didn't really plan on doing a video today on the alarms because we just thought we'd see how this goes. But I just thought I'd share what I'd found so far. And maybe as a group and a community together, we can figure out exactly how that early alarm works, because I'm still kind of stumped. But hey, we're somewhere with it now. We're better off than where we started. So, all right, guys, what are you working on this year or today? I might go over there and get that Ungo box and just take a look at it. There might be a black wire for antenna running off of it, but I want to say all the wires on it are white with red stripes. Ooh. So, okay, we'll go back over here and sit down. I grabbed the Ungo box. I don't know if yours looks like this one, but I'll show you the one that I have. And I did consider it, but no, I think I'd go with like a modern solution. Look at all these wires. See, I don't see a black wire for an antenna. Okay, some of them have green. Okay. So this is mine. Well, this is the one I have. It's actually came out of a car. I don't know what I'd do with it. I just keep it around because it's kind of cool. $30944T says, I'm working on my 951. Awesome. What are you doing to it? Happy Fox says, mine will only start for me anyways. It's not a bug nor a button, but I can't tell you. It's not a bug or a button, but I can't tell you. So it's sometimes things are lost in text due to let's see. You don't get the what someone's trying to say exactly across. So he could be saying that he's got it rigged up where it doesn't start. And he can't tell me because he doesn't want to spoil the secret, or he's trying to tell me that he can't get it started and you don't know why. And 30944 said, finally got it back from the shop, but the pain is horrible. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. That's the worst, when you send your car off the paint, it comes back looking terrible. And someone says, working on an 86 924S and an 88 924S. Awesome. Happy Fox says it's more than normally disabled. He says, no, it starts great, but only for me. Okay, so you've got a kill switch in it, basically. He says, I'm the only one. Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out. I kind of thought that that's what you was getting at, like you had a kill switch in it that only you knew how to start. It was going to be one of those things like even you didn't know how to start. Okay, sometimes things get lost in translation. But and Kenneth said a couple of weeks ago I had asked about coolant leaks. I did find 4 or 5 hose clamps slightly loose. Then I pressure tested it. 10 pounds, 2 hours, no leak down. That's awesome. Yeah, these hose clamps aren't typically loose, but they can get loose. So it's always good to go back and recheck them. Sometimes they'll just bind up against stuff, and especially some of those hose clamps next to the radiator, you won't even notice. And the worst is that upper hose clamp that's underneath that little nipple, the little plastic nipple. You'll sometimes get it jammed because there's no room to work there, and you're turning it and it just keeps trying to pop it up, and sometimes it breaks those little plastic things, which is made of jello basically, and they break so easily. You can't over torque them, they break and snap off, and then you can't have a hose clamp too close to it or it snaps off and starts leaking and stuff. So you just gotta turn it and figure out the best way to get in there to it. But that hose clamp especially is responsible for being a lot of leaks alone. So this one's got a motion button, the Sungo box that is, has a on and off and a motion, but I don't see anything for it to have a remote. I could probably unbolt it and see if there's a schematic on top. I'm always amazed at when I pull an old radio out of a car and it has the schematics there. I'm like, I miss those days. I set up a old CRT for some retro gaming at my new house, and a lot of old TVs you can just take apart, and sometimes there's extra controls inside. I had a 1960s TV for a long time. My wife calls me a hoarder, but I just like retro stuff. So on that TV, you had everything. You could go back there and just adjust anything you wanted. If the screen was just a little bit tilted, you just turn the knob and it tilted it back. You could bring it in and out, all that stuff on those old CRTs. Well, this TV, the screen's a little bit crooked. It looks like the coil got twisted. Maybe the TV fell at some point in time, and like the it's the coil itself. I don't know. I can't think of the word right now, but there's a word for it, for the coil in there. And it got turned. And so I was hoping that on the board, there would be something where I could adjust it without having to actually physically turn the magnetic coil on it. There wasn't, but when I pulled back off the TV, there was this huge schematic inside of it that told me every single thing on the board. And I'm like, I really miss those days. So there's no telling. We might pull this Ungo unit here, and there's a schematic of what all these wires do on top, because that was just a completely different time where they trusted people to like take stuff apart and fix it. But yeah, my TV was just a little bit off-centered, took a little level, and I turned the coil until it straightened up the screen. But that was the only way to do it. Unfortunately, I'd like to have had that controlled in a switch somewhere, a little potentiometer. But yeah, I got it fixed, and it's kind of cool. I got a little cool retro gaming set up in the spare room of the house, like the bonus room area. So let's see. Right, that's what I was thinking, but nowhere up. Hold on, you guys still there? Hold on. Hope you guys are still there. Okay. I This is a new laptop, and you'll see me do stuff sometimes that so on my old laptop, the off button's like right there, and I just hit this one sometimes. I was trying to plug it in because the battery was going down, and the button's on the side. Who put it there? So of course you hit it when you're trying to plug it in. Yeah, I was looking for adjustment pots on it, but yeah, there was nothing. It has like every single thing you can imagine in there, but it didn't have that one. The TV from the 60s that I had, it had it where it was just a knob on the back. There was like 15 knobs, and you could just adjust it and make it look the way you wanted it. But this one was from 84, and yep, apparently I really wished I could remember what that thing's called because it'd make more sense, but it's just escaping me at the moment. Doing live stuff is not as easy as what people think. It's sometimes you just don't remember things off the cuff, but it's always nice to do videos where you can look back and go, "Oh, I forgot the name of that." Well, I'll just when I do remember it, I'll edit it in. But when you're live, that's just the way it goes. Yeah, considering that's a TV from 1984 and it still runs like brand new, it just had probably fallen at some point and knocked the coil sideways. It's pretty good. Pretty good old TV. It's like these cars; they're pretty bulletproof. So anyway, guys, has it already been 52 minutes? Time flies on these things. I swear. Some days I'm just trying to come up with stuff to talk about, and I'm like, well, I hope this fills 5 minutes, and then next thing you know, 52 minutes have gone by. So anyway, guys, today we covered some alarms, and hopefully I'll come back and I'll have more information on that. And when I do, I'll do another segment on those, and we'll do the late ones. But as for now, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you stay warm. It's cold out there here at the shop. So hopefully you guys stay warm and have a happy new year, and we'll see you next time.